GT flies. This is what I'm going to be tying. It's a fly that's a combination of royal blue and claret. This fly always did really well for me when I was guiding in the Seychelles, especially around the surf line and in areas where there was a dark bottom. That's because there's a lot of the bait fish in these environments are reef species and dark in colour. Hook, I've got a Gamakatsu SL12 6.0. An 8.0 is also a great choice, as is the Tiemco 600 SP. And for thread, I've got Veevus GSP. It's really important to have some nice strong thread, just so you can seat everything well. So, to start with, as with many of my saltwater flies, I'm just going to add a quick bit of glue onto the shank of the hook. And starting with the thread at the eye, just work it down towards the bend. So I don't really want my thread going further past the line of the point of the eye. If I do that, to get more bulk, I had to add more materials, and then it's going to be much harder to cast, which I don't want. So next up, I've got some red bucktail. This is not really going to be visible, so honestly you can really use any colour. I'm going to tie this in with the tip facing forward, a couple of loose turns, and you're looking to have about 1 centimetre of material on the opposite side to the eye. Spin that back to bucktail around the hook, and then you can tighten the thread. And now I'm going to fold the bucktail back on itself, and then take the thread over where I've just folded. The key to this is what I'm trying to do is build volume to the fly with this bucktail, because it makes all of the other materials push out without actually adding lots of material. It's also great because it stops the feathers from wrapping around the hook. So I've just taken that thread just towards the eye in front of where I've tied over the bucktail. And for feathers, I've got saddle feathers. These are generally my preference because they have a nice stiff stem, which is important. It stops them from wrapping around the hook. And they're also quite a wide feather, so they've got a nice profile. So I'm tying one feather in on one side, the next feather will go opposite. One feather on top, and one below. At this stage there's no need to tighten the thread too much. Firstly, I just want to check everything's positioned correctly. Okay, that's looking good. And now I can add more pressure to the thread and tie everything in. Okay, I'm just going to take away those excess little bits and just neaten up a little. Now at this point I could add flash to the tail. In this case I'm not going to, because the material I'm going to be using for the body already has quite a lot of flash. I generally don't like too much flash in GT flies. I think the fish react better when the flies look slightly more natural. So next up I have some purple craft fur. I'm just taking off the excess fluff, and I'm going to tie in. Just a few loose turns. I've got one bit of craft fur on top, and I'll put another one just below. Now, same as the bucktail, I'm just going to work this around the hook just to make sure everything's evenly spaced. Looking good. Just tightening up, and then I can trim away the excess. Just neaten it up a little. Just going to comb this craft fur out. There we go, looking good. Now for the rest of the body, I've got a EP brush. It's 2.5 inches wide. Normally I'd tie my own brushes, but for the sake of this video it's just much easier using an EP brush. There's quite a lot of flash in this already, which is why I didn't add additional flash to the tail. Work this up towards the eye with a little space in between each turn. If you don't have the space, it can be a little bit too bulky. Okay, I'm just going to last turn and tie that off. As with the craft fur, I'm just going to brush this out. So for the head, I've got this royal blue Arctic fox. It's lovely long, really nice long piece of Arctic fox. I'm just going to chop that off. And a bit like the craft fur, just get rid of any extra fluff that we don't need. And as with the bucktail, I'm going to tie this in facing forward with a small overlap. We need a couple of bunches of this. No need to tighten too much. Now we can spread it around the hook and make sure it's evenly spaced. Just as we did with the bucktail, fold the Arctic fox back. Just make it nice and neat. And I'm going to do a quick whip finish. This is going to get covered in super glue, so whip finish is just really to hold the thread in place for now. So I've whip finished. I'm just going to add just some blue felt tip on the thread, just so it matches the colour of that Arctic fox. Now a quick layer of super glue. Super, so you can either fish it like that, which to be honest I often do, especially with my own fishing, because I am a little lazy about putting eyes on, or you can put on some eyes, which is what I'm going to do now. So I've got my eyes, which are these nice 8mm red eyes. I think they'll probably match the fly pretty well. peel those off one by one. Really, I want the eye sitting this side up of the shank. Can be rather fiddly little things to put on. I'll just put a small layer of glue. That's one. Okay, just checking before those are set that they're even, which they seem to be. And now super glue won't really hold them in place, so I'm going to use some UV glue just in front of the eyes and around the head. Try not to go overboard on the UV glue, otherwise you do, it just looks a bit messy. Trimming away those little bits of fur. And there you go. That's my GT fly. Excellent pattern for fishing the surf line or on a dark bottom around turtle grass, and it's a great imitation of a lot of reef species. It's always done really well for me.